Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Becky. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the English Association, and I'm so pleased to be here for our Thinking Forward session this lunchtime. A quick word about the EA. We are a learned society and subject association that was founded in 1906 to promote, support, and defend the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education from primary and early years through secondary and further education to higher education and beyond. And we cover all parts of the discipline across language, linguistics, literature, and creative writing. Events like this one are made possible by the fantastic contribution of our volunteer speakers. So thank you so much to all of you for giving us your time and sharing your ideas so generously. Thanks also to our members who make it possible to offer these events by paying their membership fees. If you would like to join our community and help support our discipline, please do consider joining us. It costs just over £50 to support our advocacy and campaigning work for a whole year, and you get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all our journals. Right, that's enough from me. Let's get to the good stuff, and I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth. Thank you.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm the Deputy Chair of the English Association, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to this Thinking Forwards English Association event, which is all about collaboration between, in this instance, colleges and universities working together. It's a warm welcome to colleagues from Joseph Chamberlain Sixthorn College, the University of Birmingham, the University of Exeter, and I'm going to let people introduce themselves, but I would just like to welcome Vanessa Havill, Peter Morey, Amina Yakin, Eva Montaz, Razia Parveen. So we're going to open up, first of all, with an introduction from Professor Peter Morey. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And thanks also to the English Association for inviting us along, and to Rebecca for her help in setting this up. It's great to meet you all, and it's great to be part of, in a small way, part of this really important work that you're doing. My name is Peter Morey. I'm Professor of 20th Century Literature at the University of Birmingham. Liz, are we going to go around and do our introductions first as individuals?
Yes, actually, why don't we do that? And also just to let everyone know that at the end of the session, the last 10 minutes, there'll be a question and answer opportunity, but please feel free to put questions in the chat, which our speakers can address as they go along, if they want, or we can leave them till the end. Okay, yeah, if we go around and everyone introduces themselves first, very good thinking, Peter, and then Peter will introduce the whole project. Okay, thank you.
Amina, maybe you should go next.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And let me start also by saying thank you very much to the English Association. It's an honor for us to be a part of this conversation. Thank you to Elizabeth, to Becky, to Jenny for all the work behind the scenes and for curating this. It's a real pleasure to be on with you at this time. My name is Amina Yakin, and I'm a professor of world and post-colonial literatures at the University of Exeter. And I'll hand over to Eva.
Hello, everyone. I want to echo what Peter and Amina said and just keep it short on my end and say that I'm a research fellow. My name is Dr. Eva Montaz on this project, and I'm working with Exeter and Birmingham, but I'm with Birmingham University. Razia?
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to say what a pleasure it is working with the English Association. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll keep this brief. I'm just a researcher on this project and working with the University of Exeter. So back to you, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a slide to look at? I wonder, Eva. We can share our screen and get them up. We did a slideshow, although we wanted to make this more interactive as per our discussion with Liz earlier in the week. So I won't be wading, or we won't be wading through this in a very formal way. And similarly, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Yes, this project is called Empathy, Narrative and Cultural Values, which gives you hopefully a sense of actually what it's all about. There's a little contact address there. Liz, I don't know if it's common practice to circulate a slideshow, perhaps if to interested parties afterwards, if this maybe if it's made available.
Absolutely. This recording will be shared with participants, and I'm sure Becky will be able to circulate the slides as well.
Great, thanks a lot. So yeah, that's the name. On the next slide, we'll tell you a little bit more about the partnership, some of which you've heard already, actually. The University of Birmingham, as the principal funding holder from the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council, is leading on this project with the University of Exeter, and particularly for this strand, because there is another strand too, which looks at health narratives. But for this strand, we're really delighted to be partnering with Joseph Chamberlain Sixth Form College. We'll talk more about that as well, because the partnership and the collaboration is, I'm sure, what you're most interested in, and it's been probably the most rewarding part of the whole exercise. At the bottom of the slide there's just a recap on who's who on the project, and we were very lucky to be able to have both Eva and Razia supporting us in this work. The next slide just is the last one from me, because I was going to keep it brief and you'll hear from all the team. As I said, we're working with Vanessa to explore basically how cultural values influence, or can be understood to influence, particularly South Asian Muslim heritage students in their engagement with the A-level English text they study at Joseph Chamberlain. So it's a kind of mini project almost. It's almost a pilot project, because what we're hoping to do is to shed some light and to discover more about the way that underlying cultural values are brought to the table when students from diverse backgrounds, and in this case Muslims, engage with the literary text. Very, very briefly, an additional thing that I should have explained. Amina and I have worked on several projects now looking at and with the Muslim community. And so this is the latest one, but the first time that we've looked at an education setting. The project follows and maps onto the existing A-level curriculum. And so therefore it's a 2-year project. And technically, although we were talking earlier and I said, well, the project's 9 or so months in, but technically we're in the 2nd year of the A-level program, the cohort that we're following. And we're using, or rather the research team brings to the table linguistic and cultural skills relating to the community that we're particularly interested in. One thing I should just briefly say before I pass the baton on is just that although we're looking at the South Asian Muslim community and that's the experience and the skill set we have, we've designed the project in such a way as to to allow a diverse participation from different people from different groups. Our focus in terms of analysis is on that group, but there's a much, as you'll hear, there's a much wider cohort of students involved. And finally, the research questions, which are sort of self-explanatory, I think. How do those cultural frameworks influence perception and the way that students connect with literary narratives? Eva will tell you a little bit more about methodology, if you like, in a moment. And also, what within the texts themselves fosters identification? What aspects of the reading experience for students to identify with some texts more than others, and we're looking in a sort of granular way, really, as best we can, to discover a little bit more about that. Obviously, we're talking about a multicultural classroom, and therefore it's not a single factor. We're not looking for the answer, as it were, to everything. But it's useful and interesting, I think, to understand more about the way that these students feel and engage with literature above and beyond the normal assessment practices with which they'd be involved. Liz, I don't know if you wanted any back on any of that.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we've divided this talk into 3 different sections, and the first section, if we move to the next slide, I think, is Peter and Vanessa, if they could speak to telling us about their collaboration between the universities and the Sixth Form College, how it came about, and what they're actually doing, just so that we can get a sense of what the project is actually involving.
Sure.
Thanks.
Vanessa, do you want to say something there? I've been talking for a long time. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, she's having technical difficulties, I think. So perhaps, Peter, if you could talk, and then others could jump in if they want to.
Yeah.
So we can see you. You're just muted right now.
I don't think she realizes that she's muted.
Yeah, I think he's having a problem. Well, basically the collaboration, I mean, the work that we're doing wouldn't have been possible without Vanessa, first thing to say. Eva and Amina in particular know more about this story too, but Vanessa was a friend and a partner of the university already, working with the Narrative 4 organisation, some of you might be familiar with, where students and groups generally get together to share their life stories or aspects of their experience with others from different backgrounds. And so Vanessa was very much involved in setting this up and in a moving spirit behind it. And what she managed to do was to come on board with the project and to bring her student cohort, a fair body of them, because obviously it's voluntary, on board with the project as well, to be participants in a way that you'll see in a minute. I don't know if Vanessa's back. Vanessa, if you are, you can always interrupt me at any point. But as I say, with Vanessa, really, we built the project with her students very much in mind, hoping that what comes out of this is something that is transferable, you know, that the findings will be useful and helpful in ways we can talk about. But it's very much a partnership where we rely on Vanessa for support, for encouragement for the students to participate, and in the organisation of events like the story exchanges, which are also part of this. Yeah, that's the thing from my end.
Yes, I mean, it's very much. Oh, yeah. Is Vanessa there? No, she's not there. I think.
Sorry, everyone. Hello.
I think she's very echoey, actually.
Hi, Vanessa. So, I think you're on two screens. So if you unmute the leave the one on your camera fine, and then just mute the other one. Yeah, you're in now.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone. Okay, I'm back. I'm really, really sorry. This is terrible. Really bad timing. I can jump in if that's okay, Peter. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes, do, Vanessa. Yes, yeah. Do.
Okay. All right. So I've been very lucky to work with all of the project team the last couple of years, but Peter and I made contact probably 3 or 4 years ago because of Ruth Gilligan from Narrative 4. And that is an organisation which is very much about exploring and giving students, particularly young people, the opportunity to develop empathy, to show empathy. And so this is a project that, you know, is 2 of my personal passions, you know, giving students voice in whatever their responses to literature, but also looking within themselves and bringing their own sort of experiences to a text, which is not something the curriculum always provides that opportunity for. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much my involvement with the project. But my collaboration with Birmingham University goes back to 2016. So in terms of collaborations, my experience as an English teacher is just make those connections and let the projects develop and show you know, it's one good thing leads to another.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, Vanessa. It is so uplifting to hear of a project that's bringing students, A-level students in particular, together with university lecturers and research. If we could now move on to the next question that we would be interested to hear your responses to. Can you tell us a bit about how the collaboration actually works, and perhaps also the challenges as well as the pleasures? So Eva, if you could talk to us about this, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we couldn't do any of this without Vanessa and her really kind attention to our project. So basically, as you can see in the beginning of this slide, so what elements, a key research question for our education strand is where we question what elements trigger cognitive responses identified by Green and Brooke and others as key components of transportation into a narrative world. So we look at mental imagery production, emotional responding, and character identification. So it sounds really complicated, but what we do is there are 3 exercises So one's a online reading journal. So what we did was we created a portal where students can log in anytime they want, and in line with what they're reading in class and also what they're reading for pleasure, they just log onto this portal, and we've created like a number of prompts. I think there's around 12 prompts that just ask them questions about character, plot, and setting, and they just literally write whatever they want. So it could be about Frankenstein, it could be about the Kite Runner. They've got a range of different responses. And yeah, they have I think 14 days to edit these journal entries, and then they can write as many as they want. So that's one thing. So students can in their own time and in confidence write whatever they want about the text that they're reading. A second exercise is called an unseen reflection. And what we do there is, or what we're planning to do next week, is we come in and we share passages with the students that they've not read before. And it's just a really quick annotation exercise. So similar to what they have in exams with, unseen passages, what we're asking them to do is just underline and highlight anything that triggers anything to do with memory, thought, or emotion. So this is very specific to the reader. And then we just ask them to expand and elaborate on that in a couple of sentences. And then the final thing we do is the story exchange sessions, which I'm going to let Vanessa explain, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah, thank you. So the story exchange is where I feel quite useful in the project. So a few years ago, again from a collaboration at University of Birmingham, Ruth Gilligan, who's the Professor of Creative Writing there, she was part of the Narrative 4 organization, which has got offices kind of based in America, but also very much based in Limerick in Ireland. So the Story Exchange project is sort of running parallel to the reading journals, and we're aiming to maybe have 4 or 5 of them. So partnership with this project. So what we're looking for is sort of whether we can measure empathy alongside the literature journals. So we have those in-house. They take place in our college library. We've had 3 so far, and generally about 12 to 14 students. And the premise is they get a choice of 3 prompts a few days before the event, and just literally have to think of a story, not write a script, just think of something, a moment, again connected to the reflective journals and the lessons. Just think of a moment in their time. And Eva and I, we model our story. We do the same process, just to give them a sense of the kind of detail that is useful, reassure them in terms of what you share. And again, they go off, their partner off, listen to each other's stories, just sort of developing this deep listening skills that are so useful for them as young people to take forward in life. So yeah, we run those, and Eva and I have worked on post-survey. It's really interesting seeing how they're responding to them. We've got one next Wednesday in college, and I'm really pleased to know that from a gender point of view, we have a really good mixed bag of male and female A-level literature students. So that's really exciting. And again, there's lots of layers of empathy and different opportunities for them to share a story, and being brave, showing courage, but also empathy. So that's my favourite part of the project at the moment, where I feel particularly useful, because I'm seeing my students in a different light. So Eva and Peter and the project team, they see the journal entries, but on my side, I really get to connect with the data from the story exchanges.
Yeah, and it's really important as well that we have all 3 elements, because like the story exchange sessions, as we'll talk about in the next slide, they really help the students get engaged. It's kind of hard because we live in a very online world, and they take in so much online content. So navigating spaces where they can do their online in journal entries, but also there's an unseen reflection exercise where there's new stimuli that all students are exposed to, and then the story exchange sessions where they're talking to another student and sharing their stories. It's really insightful. So I think the next slide we had was on the collaboration in practice. So Elizabeth asked a really good question about the challenges and pleasures. So yeah, so this is very, very kind of, you might want to add to this, Vanessa, but yeah, how we collaborate. So we continuously track the students' progress through journal entries. I share those insights with Vanessa who works really hard to keep those students engaged. We organize in-person events to conduct activities like story exchanges and unseen reflection exercises. And then it also sometimes requires us to provide extra guidance when needed. So that includes coming in sometimes and showing the students how to use the online portal effectively. So Vanessa, do you want to talk about some of
I mean, what I will add to that is in terms of the practicalities as a teacher, and how this runs within the curriculum and lesson time, even though the project is very much online, what I think we've all discovered is that the students really like the human touch. So Eva's been incredibly helpful, popping in, reminding students, giving model, sort of style models for how to respond, because our students tend to need a lot of guidance. They're very much in the A-level curriculum program to hit those AOs, how much to write in how much time. So this is so different to their learning experience, their responses. So absolute pleasure that the connections are being made across teams, across students who maybe just sit next to each other in a lesson. And it's encouraging debate within the classroom. It's encouraging debate amongst themselves. But it is quite hard to physically track students. So I do think the more face-to-face they have, for example, when we had the project launch in January, where we had 40 students meeting Amna, Eva and Peter, it was brilliant because they were straight away asking questions, barriers were broken down. Even speaking to academics, one of my biggest pleasures as a teacher is to see my A-level students communicating with university academics. Maybe that's not something for me, the shyness, the comfort zone, these students are really coming out of their shells and being brave. So yeah, just to go back, really, I think it's the key thing to this project, keep it moving and keep them stimulated, is that face-to-face. So maybe I hadn't expected that. I thought it would be like this self-service checkout kind of response, but actually they still need humans, they still need adults in the room to guide them. And my final point for the moment, before I jump on, it's the power of feedback. Actually, I think a lot of it with the students, it's not just hand holding, it's the power of feedback and feeling that they're valued in what they're contributing. So these are things I think the project team are working really well on to adapt as well.
Wow. It's nice to hear you say that. Thank you, Vanessa. With the challenges, sometimes it's really hard to push the students and encourage them to, do the journal entries because it is a longitudinal study and that's something we keep open. We have to respect their workloads and exam seasons and holiday periods. That's quite tricky, but we try and find appropriate times to do that. Also, scheduling activities can be tricky. So last term, I think we had a story exchange and we had done all the prep for it, but unfortunately it clashed with work experience week. So it kind of just, it made everything a little bit difficult. But that being said, we actually learned a lot from that exercise because we found like a more intimate group was more manageable for us as facilitators. And it worked out so much better. And now we get to hold another one next week, which is going to be fun. And then, the last one, students don't always write much in their journals, making their engagement hard to predict. So sometimes we don't really know the reason why. Is it because they haven't read the text as much as they read another one? Is it because they haven't enjoyed it? Is it because they don't want to write in their journal entries or something's going on in their lives? Engagement jumps. So one week we might have a participant who writes a lot about a certain text, and then another week 2 lines. But that's fine. It's important that we make students feel like they can share whatever they're comfortable with. And it's about being patient with them as well. I think that's it from me. Vanessa, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would just say it's interesting, just the rhythms of university and sixth form life are quite different, and that's been difficult to navigate. But I think we've worked around that. I'm really hoping that the engagement will, I imagine it will, when you come in a week or so to do the reflective journal exercises. And again, just those opportunities to have any questions. My final thing on that, I think in terms of length, for students on the journal, I do think they are, as I've mentioned, they're just programmed to write X amount in X amount of time because they are essentially exam students. So this is why this project is so important, that they have the freedom to write as much as they like. But it may be, you know, there's a conversation to be had to say, actually, a minimum, put a minimum word count in. You know, maybe they'll respond more if they know there's a minimum word count. I'm not sure. Okay.
Thanks very much. I have to say it is incredibly heartening hearing about this project that's also demystifying relationships between A-level students and universities, as Vanessa was saying. I mean, it's just really interesting to hear about it. The final question that we'd like to pose here is, what are you able to do in the project as a result of your collaboration? Or what could you not do without collaborating? And really, we're going to direct this question initially at Amuna and Razia. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really, I'll try and sort of make some connections with what Vanessa and Eva were saying just now, because it's already highlighting, you know, why the collaboration matters. But what's something that really struck me when we went in January to speak to the students was their response to how we engage them and the writing exercise that we're asking them to do with the journal entries. And I think the Q&A sort of then is a little bit around students are worried about being assessed, and students, you know, that is something that can guide the way that they write. Or I think Vanessa's already said, you know, that when they fill in the questions on the journal, that might be sort of a thing that they're thinking of in terms of, how do I respond to this, or how do I write this in the sort of given standard for the curriculum? So I think that was something they did articulate, and that was really interesting for us to hear as within the university, because when the sixth formers join us in the first year, you know, we then sort of work with them on a degree of kind of unlearning in terms of what they've just learned in the A-level process to sort of open up that relationship with literature again in sort of different ways, which is still, you know, assessment led in many ways, but it makes you think about assessment in more creative ways and more sort of sustainable ways to make this something that's not a burden, but something that they have a long-term relationship with literature. And I think the collaboration matters in helping us to really understand that in a more granular way, you know, what are the real obstacles. And then the other sort of thing that's very important for this project is that it is centered in Birmingham and in the West Midlands, because we really wanted, as Peter said, both he and I have worked on research projects before on Muslim communities and Muslim representation, and they've been sort of from a macro level, and often they've centered around work in London. So it was very important for us to take this work outside of London as well, and to give it a more regional focus, because it's so important, you know, where constantly students are being asked to translate and understand cultural values in relation to the curriculum. You know, we sort of go into British values and those kinds of things. So then how do those students feel, and how do they respond from not the kind of sitting in the center, but sitting from a regional location, and to really hear their voice and have that included? And I think that's also where then what we're seeing coming out through the story exchanges, for example, and the journal entries, and even Vanessa's sort of work in person with the students, is that there's a real co-creation coming out through these kind of unseen reflection exercises, the story exchanges, and the students are, you know, they're not sort of being talked at by the project, as it were. They have a real opportunity to say to us, well, because actually they did say to us, like, how are you going to feed back to us, you know, in January about this? So that was also really, really good to hear. And yeah, and I think sort of I had a broad point in there also about how then, do we understand narrative empathy? Because often, and that's the sort of method, goes back to the methodology that Eva was talking about earlier, that we are borrowing from Oatley and others, and to think about, that relationship is not as straightforward, and there are sort of concerns to do with how things are embedded in certain narrative structures, and how the curriculum may impose a certain kind of universalisms that we think that everybody is attached to because they come from the same background or they're sort of similar. So it's about sort of engaging with difference and how a difference can be sort of decoded in this way. So I'll jump onto the goals, and I don't know if Razia, did you want to jump in as well?
I just wanted to say that without this collaboration, the study that we're doing would be limited, because it's also allowed, this collaboration has also allowed us to engage with the local community, the community in Birmingham, with the young people in Birmingham. So it's very much a collaboration between both parties, and it allows for much more richer data, I suppose, and we engaging with these young people, we become familiar with their reading habits.
Great. So thank you, Razia. So I think the students then have this, what we hope that what the project is helping to do is to build this deeply reflective kind of engagement with literary texts, where they're not being measured by the assessment, where they really have the freedom to write about it as they want to, without worrying about how am I going to be marked on this. And that's, it's not an easy thing to disentangle, and because they're time poor as well sometimes, as it's already been mentioned, the sort of timelines of the institutions don't match up, and then they have other things that they are very busy, young people are very busy. So it's about sort of really opening that relationship up with reflective engagement and reading. That's so important, that we hope that the reading journal will sort of lead to in the long term, and to give them the freedom to express their own feelings, to really, not to answer to the formula, as it were. And I think there is also, I think here the opportunity is to, because of the study's focus on South Asian Muslim community as well, I think what we hope is that this is an opportunity to really get a deeper and more granular understanding of what might be the ways that we can look beyond the universalisms that determine how people relate to texts and to stories, to sort of really get them to speak about the story in their own words, and to interpret and translate it back at us, to feel confident that that translation and interpretation is also going to be heard. And I think that sort of being heard is really important. And we hope that through this kind of long term, through the collaboration with Narrative 4, with Joseph Chamberlain, and the work that we're doing, because it was a very it wasn't easy to get into schools in Birmingham when Peter and I were building the project and developing the project, and Peter can speak about this more. So I think to build trust with the community as well is something that we've worked very hard on, is something that we'll continue to work on. And we hope that in doing that, we can extend that and bring into the community the teachers as well, with curriculum choices and enhanced kind of pedagogical practice in multicultural classrooms, because trust is such an important part of the multicultural space. And yeah, I'll just stop.
Peter, would you like to speak to the issues around trying to find young people in schools and work with schools?
Yes, I think that I kind of just blundered into the space. That's probably part of the thing. With the idea that Amina and I had been cooking up between us, that we wanted to understand a bit more about how reading actually worked at a experiential level. You know, when you pick up a book and you start to read it, you like it or you don't like it, and you know, you may carry on and you may not. And obviously, if you're being assessed on it, you've got to slog your way through it. But what are those initial feelings like? And I think when I took the idea to some of the schools around Birmingham, they were very busy, first of all. I mean, you would know much better than I do how busy everyone is. But I think there was also some understandable concern given the backstory of multiculturalism and education in Birmingham, the Trojan horse business, all of those things. There was some suspicion about a university, particularly probably a white professor, stumbling in and wanting to do something that people possibly thought was measuring Muslim students in some way. So it was quite hard to sort of push through that. The advantage that we had with Joseph Chamberlain was that Vanessa had worked with Birmingham before and also understood the project quite instinctively. So I think really the failing was on my part in not preparing the ground very well, and also the fact that everyone is very busy. But when we did meet Vanessa and we decided to really focus in, Joseph Chamberlain is quite a big sixth form. Vanessa, you could probably speak to that better than me. And also the point about the confidence gap, because I think that was something you said to me very early on, wasn't it?
Yeah, we have 2,000 full-time students, most on a A-level programme. And in my department, we offer A-level literature, A-level language as separate A-levels, and we get quite a few who do too. Or A-level language and literature. So I had the advantage that I'd worked with Ruth before, so that was a really easy connection to have with you, Peter. But I think I've always felt really passionate that I've been at my sixth form for 20 years, which, shock horror, but it's because I really like my students. I love the community that they are drawn from. I think that they're incredibly underrepresented in terms of having a voice. It's a very young city. I think this is a project that can run and run. And I just find Birmingham is, like other cities as well outside of London, it's not often you get an opportunity that young people talking about literature. So to go back to the question, I suppose, it's more in terms of voice. I was teaching A-level creative writing when I first met Ruth Gilligan. That was my first partnership. And that was probably the only A-level I've taught where students could design their own curriculum. So it's really exciting for me to sort of put people into the right direction in terms of text. But I just think the voices there we're writing about and adapting. I think Peter and I had a really interesting first conversation. And I was just saying, after 20 years of teaching Birmingham, I still have South Asian students not using Asian names in terms of literature. You still have, that's just one example of not seeing themselves represented. So the text we use, it's projects like this which really make them feel that they have a voice. And that's to do with social class as well. That is a massive thread in our sixth form, that we are very aspirational. We make them aspirational, but it's about finding opportunities where they can get involved. A lot of my students, even though we had 40 at the start and they're not all engaging at the moment, the ones that are the ones who've been to the story exchange. They're taking part in every aspect of the project. So for me, learner voice is just something in the teaching profession. Everyone hears about learner voice, but this is seeing themselves as individuals. And that's something I feel really passionate about. It's brilliant to get great A-level grades, but actually to go to university, whether they study English or not, the fact they've had this experience is really important to me.
How do you actually engage your students initially, your A-level students, to get involved, given how instrumental we know A-level students are? How do you manage to break through that, Vanessa?
Well, what's really important, I've got brilliant colleagues. So again, whoever is teaching the different A-levels, so we'll have a team meeting. They're very used to the projects we're doing with University of Birmingham. So I will go in and do a pitch. I think that's what happened here, and then they will reiterate it, and then we just get them on board. But I think the main thing is like doing that face-to-face in-house. We had the launch meeting in January, and I think by them meeting the team, it made them more excited about being part of it. So I do think that human face-to-face contact is important. They are really aspirational, Elizabeth. So even if they don't want to study particularly English, they are readers. They are readers. They may go on to do history or law, but we have a lot of students who really genuinely enjoy literature. All the story exchanges that we have take place in our college library, which is beautiful. It's a really great space. So as a sixth form college, we're very much, you know, we see all of our students as potential readers, regardless of subject. But for this project, there is a lot of patience and perseverance. I've worked with teenagers, you know, for 20 years. So, you know, you just have to sort of gently nod them, send the odd email, etc. But it does help when we have the story exchanges as well. I think the students will become ambassadors as well. I mean, I don't know in terms of the future of this project, but you know, it'd be great to see if students can still kind of advise other ones coming through as well.
Thank you, Vanessa. Before we open up to others in the audience, to and I can see we've got one question or point in the chat. But I know this has been going on for 10 months. How long is the project, and what do you see the end point as being? Anyone? I mean, Peter.
Yeah, I keep jumping in, so I should shut up. It's 3 years is the whole thing. So we figure that was a sort of little period of, it was very quick setup, actually. It had to be necessarily to catch the wave of the academic year, because the funding came in about halfway through the preceding year. And so really we've got a fairly intense period of working with the students and listening to them and data gathering, if you like. And then the final year will be really answering or trying to answer some of these questions that the project has raised. So 3 years.
So will you be working with different groups of students next year, or the same? Are they first year A-level students?
Just going into second year now, and we wanted to follow a single cohort across in order to do the kind of longitudinal work to see how their empathic engagement shifts across the 2 years. If it does, we'll see.
Right. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
I just add just another complication, but we've overcome, is that as a sixth form, we offer 4 AS subjects, and then they choose 3 for A-level. So we've just got some new data as students who were in the original cohort are very much, even though they're not studying A-level literature, just a handful, but they're very much, you know, they really want to take part in the project. So even if they're not doing A-level literature in the second year, they're still taking part. So that's something, that's a practicality we've had to deal with as well.
And do the students also go to the university as much as you go to the college? So they get to go to...
Actually, if you don't mind, not at the moment. I mean, we have done, I know Eva does loads of amazing outreach. So I have to say it works really well for us when staff come to us, because I think the students feel a little bit more comfortable. They're on their own territory, so to speak. But that's not to say, you know, there may be an opportunity to go on campus as well.
Just to experience being on the university campus.
And yeah, I mean, just very quickly as well, because there are in Birmingham, University of Birmingham is basically every student's dream. At my sixth form, they see it very much as their local university, and but not often do they go on campus or go to open days, because they so actually that would be a really interesting part to do, to set foot on campus. But I think by working on our come to visit us and in our sixth form, that's definitely been a real positive for the project.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just aware there was one point which is about the positives and the joys that this project brings. Razia and Eva, I wonder if you could just speak for a few moments about the positives and the joys that you both experienced in being involved in this project and with the students.
Well, I can say that working on this project as engaging with the young people of Birmingham, especially for Eva, engaging with the young people of Birmingham has been a pleasure. I think Eva will agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating because I contrast it, like the story exchanges and the journal and the online journals. So with the story exchanges, it's so nice because how they work is you tell a story to your partner and they retell your story. So they retell their partner's story. So it's an actual exchange. And it's so interesting to see how they embellish some of the narratives, not in a bad way, but just in a really empathetic way. So and also seeing them build friendships, like you leave the library session and you see that some of the students, they don't know who another person is, even though they go to the same college and do the same course, and then they make friends. So that's a really joy to see, seeing that you're a part of that story in a tiny way. But yeah, also I love the journal entries and how it really surprises me. Like I mean, we always say this at university level when you're in seminars or teaching, and that you read a text and you find a different way to interpret it. You really see that with sixth form students too, and how they really bring their identities and their culture and their own experiences and how they really share that with you. It's a real honor because some of the students, they share some of their really personal experiences about, you know, their family lives or their religious thought. And it's a real honor to have that, you know, privilege. So yeah, that's a real joy for me.
Yes,
And also I
Well-
love collaborating with Vanessa as well. She's such a joy to work with.
Yeah, each journal entry is very rich in is very rich and individual.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
also really excited because we have like the third phase, the new phase of the research project where we're doing the unseen reflection exercises. So it's going to be a really interesting cultural experiment to see how a group of very different students react to the same passage. Like that's something we haven't tested. So it's going to be really fun.
That sounds very exciting, and we really look forward to watching the project develop. Now, in the closing sort of 12 minutes that we have, I can see in the chat we've got some comments, so I'll start with them. But then, if people would like to jump in and ask questions, please do. We've got one from Ewan Fernie. He says, really interesting, thank you. I'm wondering what sorts of literacy might be needed from non-Muslim educators looking to reach and benefit from the perspectives of Muslim students, readers. For example, it seems to me that in Britain and English studies, we should be cultivating more knowledge of and engagement with the Quran. Also, maybe some mileage in thinking about what we can do in English studies with the help of Muslim readers, with the notion of the people of the book. I mean, Ewan is here, he may want to jump in and speak himself, but who would like to respond to that?
I'm going to keep this brief because I'm hogging the territory here. I mean, thanks to Ewan, first of all. Ewan is a colleague at University of Birmingham who's an inspiration in this kind of area, first thing to say. My answer to you is quite short, which is come back in about a year and I might have more, or we might have more to tell you, because in a way, the point of the project is to think about what educators generally, non-Muslim educators, hopefully could benefit perhaps most, can discover about the way students actually read and what they actually engage with and what really grabs them. And so that will be something that we're looking to find out more about. And the other point about the Quran, I think, is a very relevant one. Some of the work I'm doing at the moment is to think about the way that aspects of narrative connect across cultures. We tend to think of the rise of the novel or something in very kind of European or Western terms, when there's that whole ebb and flow of stories and story types over history, over time, and over geography. And those things happen particularly with multicultural societies. So we don't expect to find the answer to how Muslim young students read. That's not the point at all. It is to understand some of those elements that are shared, and better knowledge of the Quran and of where they're coming from would be very, very useful. I said I wasn't going to waffle, so I'm going to stop.
Eva, you look like you want to jump in there.
Yeah, can I jump in there? So this is kind of, I got very excited when I saw this question. Thank you, Ewan. So my previously, before I did this research fellowship, I did a study on Paradise Lost and how readers connect with that. And my main focus was looking at Muslim readers. But there was a chapter in it that was really one of my favorite chapters. It was a teaching Paradise Lost in higher education. And it actually found that for students, because we're living in a more, what's the word? Non-religious society, I guess, engaging for Muslim students, engaging with anything that kind of had a connection to Abrahamic faiths, so biblical narratives, anything to do with spirituality, that actually gave them a way in connecting with a text. So Paradise Lost, for example, was a biblical rendition, you know, of a text, and Muslim readers found that very, very engaging. So I think for educators, one of the tutors that I interviewed found that just having that awareness of like cross-cultural, you know, narratives and multi-faith dialogue really helped students of all faiths in classrooms engage. Yeah.
Amina?
Oh yeah, I was just going to follow on from you know, the lovely example that Eva's just given, and as someone who taught I've been at Exeter more recently, but I was at SOAS before, and I teach South Asian studies and have been an area studies sort of person as well as a comparative literature and literature person, and sort of bringing that into the curriculum and working. And I've actually taught university students from Birmingham in London, and it's been really interesting to hear their perspectives in the classroom with regards to those kinds of connections and engagements that you mentioned with regards to that. So often it's really very much about the selection of the text. So, you know, if like now we teach the Satanic Verses, you know, if we decide to teach it, it will be overtaken by one particular kind of narrative that is attached to it. But how do we extract that and give students the agency that they actually have the freedom and the capacity to really connect with it on, you know, a sort of textual level? And that's the kind of thing, you know, I hope that something, what we're doing with this project will, in the long term, you know, get us out of that sort of stranglehold that we have with regards to texts, the relationship to texts.
Okay, thank you. I can see there are two more points just before we finish. We have
Elizabeth Cashton's got her hand up as well.
Okay, thank you. Right, Liz Cashton, would you like to speak now? Thanks, Jenny.
Yes. So I teach creative writing at the Open College of the Arts. But I'm just very personally touched by this situation, as my South African mixed race granddaughter has arrived from Johannesburg to do her A-levels at Bristol College. And she is finding the lack of knowledge expected of English literature classics to be a great difficulty. So somebody says Paradise Lost, somebody says Jane Eyre, and she says, yeah, what? So it's not only Muslim students, because she's mixed race background, white, Jewish, South Asian, Kerala, and a bit of Zulu. So there are lots of other people, and there must be other people in the college in Birmingham who are saying, why stick? I mean, okay, this is a project dealing with Muslims, but there must be little pockets of other communities. And what about the whole West Indian community who has English, but it's again a completely different background? How do we bring them in? We need a project for every community.
We do, but also it's that whole thing about looking beyond universality or universalisms, as you were saying. Thank you very much for that really valuable point. I just want to get in two more comments, and then all of you can respond, because we only got a few minutes left. So Jenny Richard has said, I love this project. How brave and necessary to step outside the assessment structures that shape reading. Two questions. I love Razia's description of the young people in the community as collaborators. If they were on this call now, what would they say about what they have learned, found difficult, benefited from? That's question number one. Question number two, is this a project with relevance beyond English studies for all students, young people? Is this a way that study, stories and language is for all? Okay, can you just, could you respond to maybe to Liz as well?
Right. Hello. If the students were on this call, right, the students, they see what I've found so far with the limited data is that they have they see themselves in some of the texts and they project their own lives, their own worlds into their texts. That's what they've learned what I've learned so far. And the second question is this a project with relevance beyond English study? I suppose it is with a relevance, a project beyond English studies, but only time will tell once this one, if this is a longitude study, hopefully other subjects will be looked into, explored.
Yeah,
Okay,
we haven't bored you with methodology for obvious reasons, but we hope that what we're building, the way of understanding, is something that could apply to other communities and other subjects too.
Okay, just very quickly, just to sneak in before we finish, are there any, so Eva McNamon, are there any initial surprising discoveries about their engagement with the core A-level text, which it would be beneficial to share more widely with teachers of A-level English texts?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I think they're not hugely excited about Shakespeare. But anyway, I'll just say that, which is no disrespect to Shakespeare studies.
Okay, she's also added about Paradise Lost. Eva's example of Paradise Lost is a kind of understanding of cultural engagement with texts, which her question was hoping to hear about. So Eva, do you want to add anything more quickly?
Yeah, it's just a shame that there's less and less sixth form colleges that are studying Paradise Lost, because I really feel like it's a really rich, I'm gassing Milton right now, but it's a great opportunity for students to bring their identity to the table and have it be valued. You know, so I wish more sixth form colleges were doing Paradise Lost.
Well, that's a very interesting note on which to end, and how absolutely fascinating. And certainly we very much hope that you'll be writing up this research and we can publish it in the various English Association journals, Use of English Journal or English Journal. We always welcome write-ups about this kind of project, but this is such a groundbreaking project. We thank you so much for your time to come along and share it with us, and we very much look forward to hearing about it as you progress. So thank you very much to everyone who's contributed, yeah, we just have a final comment there in the chat if you all want to read it before we finish. Oh yeah, I agree about Paradise Lost. Thanks to all for a really inspiring session. So can we just give an applause to all the participants, and the very best of luck to you all. And I hope you can carry on and have an inspired evening, reignited with inspiration towards Paradise Lost. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.